Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to Covenant Network Book Club here, hosted by Pink Church PHX. We are in our second season here, and this is episode 3. It's kind of a short season-ish. We really loved having Faye Hamilton on the broadcast last week, so if you didn't get a chance to hear that interview, go back and search it out on YouTube, on our Pink Church PHX channel, or it's on our Facebook also. That was really excellent to hear about an author who incorporated Christian themes as well as LGBTQ characters in a positive light in her book. And so I would encourage you to go back, listen to the interview, and of course get the book, although the free one that she offered last week is no longer available. Just pay for it. It'll be all right. It goes to a good cause. So tonight we're looking at Chapter 3 of Ministering to the Lord by Roxanne Brant. And the subtitle is The Power of His Presence. You know, at Pink Church, we're very presence oriented. We want to know what kind of atmosphere we can create, or what we need to do to ensure that the presence of God is manifest among us. So this book is of great interest to us. And to help me tonight and to discuss chapter 3 with me, I've got two amazing peoples. There is Jeffrey Young and MJ. Come on down. There they are. Look at them, those cheery faces. Both these people, let me tell you, both these people have my heart. They have the Lord's best interest in their heart and the interest of their people and our community in their heart. And so I love both of you so much. And I've always appreciated having gutsy, fearless conversation with them. So I'm looking forward to that tonight. So thanks for coming. I'm going to start by reading the opening paragraph of chapter 3, which is kind of the structure for our conversation tonight. It says, we learn how to minister to the Lord by studying in the scriptures how God's people ministered to him, and by ministering to him ourselves. And the first part seems really obvious, that, you know, let's look in the scriptures to see who did what, and, you know, what happened as a result of that, and all of those things. But what we sometimes overlook is that we learn to minister to the Lord by ministering to the Lord. There's a phrase that we use at work when we're helping teachers do a better job than what the great job that they're already doing. And the phrase we use is, we learn the work by doing the work. And of course, we're talking about children in that sense. Is the work, what children actually do in schools is what they're learning. But it's the same thing here. We get good at ministering to the Lord by ministering to the Lord, not by avoiding the opportunity or anything. It's the same kind of idea as when, when we have to develop patience. We only develop patience by practicing patience. It's not flung on us unexpectedly. It's not a gift that we suddenly get and unwrap and it's all complete, right? So Roxanne Brant starts off talking about Abraham, and how in Genesis 2, God told him to sacrifice his son Isaac. Let me ask you this: when did Abraham learn to obey, and how? Like, what happened with that?
When you sent that question, I went to Genesis, and it's the first thing that we have. We get his description of the lineage from Noah's son to his father, and then the next chapter that closes out the chapter, and then the next chapter is God telling Abram to leave his people and to go from his people. And so Abram does it. The thing that I found interesting was it says, leave your people, leave But he takes his nephew, he takes his wife. So I was like, well, God, was he being fully obedient? Not sure he goes. But at this point, I mean, he has cattle and livestock and like wealth of some, as he's moving his entire life. So he does move his entire life. But that is the first interaction that we see with Abram in the Bible, is him in some way being obedient to what God is speaking directly to him, and he's doing what God said to do.
Just by doing it.
Just by doing it.
Yeah. MJ, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I really spent some time on this question too, and I've been on a real Abraham and Sarah theme for about a week. As many Pink Church folk know, because I love to talk in our community chat. But the shift to me for Abraham, it's really similar to what Jeff is saying, is that he takes a step on his own, right? There's some action, there's some a recognition of a call to do something, yeah, a heart tug, and then a response, and that's an individual response. It's not collective. It's totally unique, totally independent. That's the first place that I see in that story, in that text. So,
yeah, and it seems such a big thing too. Like, go from your people to another part of the world that I'm sending you to. When I wrote that question, I thought, so how did I end up in Phoenix? Like, that just seemed like a really strange thing. And I remember before I came to the United States, I was in Atlanta and then Phoenix. There was a song that we used to sing at the Baptist Church in Brisbane about, I will go with you to the ends of the earth. And we'd sing the chorus, I will go with you to the ends of the, and over and over and over and over and over. You know, it was a Hillsong song, so of course you sang the chorus a million times. But I remember at one stage, while I was singing that, I heard the Lord say to me, and this was before my super Pentecostal days, this was my Baptist days, I heard the Lord say to me, will you really do that? Oh, yes, 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 yes. Singing away, and he goes, will you really do that? Will you really go to the ends of the earth? Of course I will, of course I will. And as I've noticed with me, often the Lord asks me 3 times because he really wants to make sure. And I said, yes, when he asked me the 3rd time. But it kind of dawned on me that he's really asking me this. He's not asking just on that surface level. It sounds like a good idea to go to the ends of the earth, because we all agree with that. Like, the Great Commission is to go into all the world and preach the gospel and, you know, all of that. And I realized at that point that he was really asking me, would I do that? It was like that test. Will you really do this? And so now here I am in Phoenix. So people, when they ask me, so where is the end of the earth? I know that it's Phoenix because God asked me, would I go to the end of the earth? And I'm here. But the thing about obeying that, it was much simpler than what people might imagine, to like sell everything, uproot family from one country and bring them to another. Like, after the decision was made that we would come, I was actually living here within 6 weeks of that. So, you know, when we're learning to obey, I've always held God never asks us to do anything difficult. Think about Moses at the Red Sea, right? God said, hold up your staff. Well, that's all he did. Those instructions we perceive as being very easy. But when we learn to obey, all of them are easy. Some of them have a higher cost than others, but they are certainly easier than moving to America and then to Atlanta at the time. That it went much easier than I thought it was ever going to be. And I think that was because I was just obeying the Lord. You know, when he calls us, he equips us and he goes before us. Have either of you had an experience of learning to obey where it was easy, or where you really struggled with it?
Am I still learning that lesson? I have it's very real to me right now because I am in this apartment and you can see behind me the shelf of books that is there. When I tell you that that is one corner and that I have bookshelves that line every corner of this room and they are all full of books, and I counted them when I got here and it was over 700 of them. And before this library amassed, I had forcibly, in many moves before, had to throw away or get rid of quickly entire libraries of books. And that's made me resistant to letting go of some things, especially because a significant chunk of this library is from when I was in school. And I think that it is the foundation for what my eventual thesis or dissertation will be on. I mean, that I basically have a literature review in my library right now. But God said, no, I need you to purge that. We're lightening up. It's trying to focus your attention. And I want to lighten you up so that when I tell you to move, you will be able to move more quickly because you have, and keeps on bringing me back to the rich young ruler with all of his possessions and saying, sell everything you have and give to the poor.
Yeah.
And I drag my feet on it. And then there are times when it's like, I know that I won't do it on my own, but it's so much bigger. It's going to take time. It's going to take effort. And when God is trying to bring the sword to cut the flesh off that and break the bindings of lethargy or hindrance, like when he's trying to tell you, child, I am the one who breaks through. I am the one who goes before you. I will make the way. I am the one who partners with you to co-labor with you. So let's get it going. So that is what we are working on right now. And even getting to here in Atlanta, well, in Georgia, about an hour north of Atlanta. I had been wanting to come down here for 3 solid years. I mean, even longer than that. But really within the last 3 years, I was like, I'm ready. I want to do this, Lord. And I'd gotten confirmation a couple times. And like you said, he doesn't tell us anything too difficult. He said, write your resume and cast the net. And I have been dragging my feet under feelings of inadequacy and everything. I'm a first generation college student. I just graduated, didn't know how to navigate the whole thing, the whole job search field. I was like, just write your resume and cast it out. I wrote my resume, I sent it out, and as soon as I did that, within 2 weeks, I had a job that was the linchpin for me to get down here.
Yeah.
And he said, just, do you see what obedience brings acceleration?
Yeah, that's good. Obedience brings acceleration. I'd write that down, but I don't have a pen right here. So I'm going to write that on the tablet. Thank you. Write it down for me, please. MJ, what about you?
Oh, I was just so engrossed in those stories. Thank you, Jeff. I tried to decide. I know the theme is worship. I'll probably tell one or two, and you can just cut me off. When it comes to being obedient with worship, one of my favorite stories is from a really long time ago. I was a young, headstrong. David's like, you're still headstrong. I was a young, headstrong.
You're still young.
God bless you. Campus pastor in the Assemblies of God. And I was leading a mission trip for all the national ministries. So there's college students from all over the country. And it was a really long time ago. I'm not going to tell you what year because it was a long time ago. So missions was different. We're in Morocco. And I'm in charge of this trip. I'm leading this mission trip. And there's probably maybe like 20 really stellar worshipers, just really neat people, strong in the Lord, and we just feel overwhelmed. There's a little bit of an echo. I hope that's not me. We feel overwhelmed for many reasons. I'm not going to deconstruct that right here, but we're not feeling like our work that we're doing is worth much. And it was one of the strangest times that the Lord told me, I want you collectively to worship. We're in a country where at the time, and again, missions is complicated. I won't unpack that here. We'll do that another time. We're in a place at that time, a long time ago, where it's not okay to be evangelizing in another country like Morocco. Not okay on a lot of levels. And it's also not a place you publicly worship. I'll just leave it at that. So we're in this huge city, and I feel this strong, like this clear call from the Lord, like what you guys need to do is spend some time together in worship. That's what you need to do. So I find a way, and I have to say it was one of the most incredible. We were out in the middle of nowhere. We hire a driver, go to the middle of nowhere, outside of the big bustle of the city, and we have this half day of worship together. And I guess my highlight for this, I feel like I'm rambling, is really about, it's the same theme that Jeff said. It's that worship, or obedience, in this case, worship, it brings acceleration. After that moment, and I know it's a little anecdotal, it was probably one of the most incredible trips that I've ever seen or been on. And I'm a person who spent years leading and going on trips like that. So I guess that's mine for now.
Yeah, no, that's really good.
What cracks me up about that is Abraham gets told to take his son, go up on a mountain into the desert to worship.
Yeah.
And so
Abraham says, I'm going.
Moses was leading when he went to Pharaoh to take the Israelites out and to deliver the Israelites. He said, I want to take my people out so that we can worship the Lord.
That's right.
Yeah. So thinking about when Abraham was told to, take your son and sacrifice him, and Abraham actually said, I'm just going up the mountain to worship. Brant writes about the preparation that Abraham went through in order to be a worshiper. I don't think that was, I don't think people heard him say, I'm going up the mountain to worship, and they went, oh, well, that's unusual. I kind of think that was part of the flow of his life anyway. So can we talk about the preparation for a little while? So what's the importance of preparation to worship for us? Is it important? Go on, MJ.
I knew you were going to call on me. Okay, I'm not going to look at notes. I don't need them. I'm going to say that if you're talking about preparation, I think maybe it's heart preparation, getting centered, being in a place without distraction, whatever that means for you. Maybe it doesn't mean, some real scheduled, repeated time. And maybe it doesn't mean there's no sound. Whatever that means for you, I think the preparation is being able to have 100% focus, undivided heart focus, spiritual focus, heart, soul, mind focus on the Lord. What would you say, Jeff? What do you think?
Very that. It's very that. A couple weeks back, one of my comments on the previous series of book club was about what sanctification means. And sanctification, my definition of sanctification was the purification process that happens when one is in the presence of God and intentionally in the presence of God, because our flesh and the sin, God is holy. So as we draw near to God, the holiness, as we draw closer to his light, it dispels the darkness. It it cleanses the flesh. As we delight in him, the desires of our heart become purified. He is an all-consuming fire, the word tells us. He is a refiner. So there is, and worship, because just like when we're going on a date with someone, when we're setting a time to be intentional about relationship building, we separate that out. It is about turning one's full attention to that task. And the task of, if God never leaves us or forsakes us, he's always with us. So when we give him our attention, we are honoring that. Even though he is always with us and he never forsakes us, when we get into our distractions, when we go an amount of time without acknowledging him, and acknowledging, and even step further, without honoring him. There's a difference between acknowledging and honoring.
Yeah.
I know it's very real to me. I love it. Roxanne Brant says you can't just turn the TV off 1 minute and get into the presence of God the next. You do have to turn the TV off, and you do have to turn yourself to God. But it is a drawing near to him, staying focused on him, and seeking after him, because the word also says that he is a rewarder of those who diligently seek him.
I was going to add that. I think too, like in my experience, there's an easing in to authentic worship. Like it's just exactly what Brant said. You might set some intentionality of some time and you start going in that direction. But there's a moment where you're like, okay, I'm ready now. Or okay, now is the time. Maybe it's not right away, but you feel this shift, for lack of a better word.
This shift into, I would dwell in your house all the days of my life, and your presence.
Yeah.
Well, even if you look at worship in the tabernacle, like there was this noisy, crowded space outside, and then as the worshiper came in, it was a little bit more subdued, but there was still activity and things that needed to be done, and then go in again to another level, and it's quiet, it's subdued, the lighting is dim, and then into the Holy of Holies, where it's just the absolute heart of God. And I think that's a model for us in our worship as well, that there will be a time, even during worship, where it's rowdy and lots of activity and stuff, but it gradually draws us in. Jeff, I'm glad you mentioned that, God is always present with us, and we know that. And the idea of turning our heart toward worshiping him, and preparing ourselves for him, is to increase our awareness of his presence, because he really does never leave us. It's our awareness that waxes and wanes. And I love that you brought that up, that he doesn't ever leave us. I could keep talking about all of this all night. So one of the other things that Roxanne Brant said on page 54, she said that the key to worship is giving something to God. And then on the same page, she says worship is tied in with the sacrifice. So worship is key to giving something. The key to worship is giving something to God, and then worship is tied in with sacrifice. And we saw the tie-in with sacrifice with the story with Abraham and Isaac. Those two statements say the same thing, but they also say something different to one another. So I've got a game for us to play. Let's play Spot the Difference. So we're going to think about the two statements, and let's see on what level are they the same, and what level are they different. Thinking of the first statement, what do we bring to God in worship?
Everything. Ideally, it is all that. So many times in the Word and the Psalms in particular, it talks about with everything that is within me, with all that I have, with my heart, mind, soul, and strength. Those are full attention. But then it to me, it's really it's heart again. It comes down to the heart. Like I mentioned earlier, our God is an all-consuming fire. When we delight in Him, He purifies the desires of our heart. We when we bring all of us, when we come as we are in all of it, all the complexities, God will pick up our heart. And the longer we stay in His presence, the longer that we submit to Him, we start to let go of things that we have been holding on to so that we can hold on to Him more and we
Yeah,
can receive what He's giving us.
yeah,
And that exchange, when we say, I won't say we, I. Proverbs talks about a man thinks all of his ways are right. So sometimes we walk through life. I walk through life and I think that I've got it figured out and I think I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. And then I get to the place where I'm pressing into God and God's like, this thing that you've been doing on a regular basis, this pattern or habit that you've developed, where your attention is not focused on me in those moments. I get that, you enjoy this or that, but I'm not necessarily doing that with you. I'm there. I'm just watching you, waiting for you to turn your attention to me. Because I want you to walk in the full awareness, the full measure that all the time we are co-laboring and we are doing things together. So then realizing just what I am holding on to, and uh, we'll get to this in a minute when we talk about all of the different postures and positions of worship and ways we can worship. But how many times I have woken up in the night with my hands clenching and hearing Holy God being right there and being like, okay, you can release now.
yeah, yeah. Sometimes I've found personally that you refer to the idea of turning our attention to Him, and often even in worship, the attention I find is very much on myself still, even though I can have the intention to worship. But when it comes to, I remember when I was first learning or practicing raising my hands during worship, I would do that, but my focus was anywhere but God because it was all on me thinking, are people watching this? What are those like straight Baptists in the back, like full-on Baptists behind me thinking when I raised my hands? Like but it was a practice. I had to put aside self-consciousness. There are people that I've talked with, they've had to put aside shame that they hold on to in order to worship. So and sometimes that's well, for me, I know that it's just that recognizing that they're the things that I have to continually put aside or give to God. Like God, you take my self-consciousness. You just, I'm focusing on you. I'm not even going to talk about my self-consciousness anymore because that's focused back on me again.
Well, even
Mandy,
that, David,
what about you?
when we raise our hands, how many different motivations, like again, heart motivations, what is our heart doing? Are we giving something to God? Are we receiving something from God, palms upward? Are we just exalting Him? and getting to that place where I just want to magnify you. Like just to honor all that you are. I know that you are all around me and you fill this space.
Yeah.
It's the dance. It is such a, and
It's all those things.
all those things, all the things.
Yeah.
It's all those things. I was thinking something similar or complementary to you, Apostle David. When we talk about practice and worship, I find it really true from in my experience as well that part of our worship is putting down our burdens. When you say something like shame, to get in past the noise of the outer courtyard, we use that metaphor, and then into the temple, and then closer to the Holy of Holies, we have to let those things go, right? But I also find that when you say let's play the game of naming the difference, worship is all the things that Jeff said. It's focus. It's giving our attention. It's those sweet things. And then along the way, in my experience, we find that we're able to see what we need to put down. Both of you said the same thing in your own way. We're able to see what it is we're holding on to that we need to let go of. But there's something further in sacrifice, in my experience. There's a differentiation. And that's where you can hear what the Lord wants to replace what you're holding on to. Or it's where you can see whatever that wholeness of for whatever that thing is ahead in the Lord, and you're putting that down. That's sacrifice, those sweet things. Saying, I trust you, I believe you. And you know what, Lord? That's all yours. That's all yours. That's yours. That's part of, for me, the differentiation when we get a little bit further from into worship, I will say, towards what sacrifice means. I'm doing my teacher eyes, but yeah.
Financially speaking.
Sure.
And we press in with God, and we've been faithful giving. And I've had this since I've been down here. There's a balance I try to strike between my experience and general, but when one starts to become a faithful giver, they start to walk, and they have a number. If they're going by Old Testament tithing, they do that 10%. They are tithing that 10% on a faithful basis. And they start to see God show up and meet that. And then God's like, okay, so are you ready to step up? Are you ready to, and God will lay a number on the heart, and it is more than it's more than the 10%. It is more than what we think that we can do in our comfort zone of, okay, I have these bills and these bills. But God's like, no, I am your provider. You cannot outgive me. You cannot give me too much. I will show up and pour out and open the blessings. I will, and then lead you to the scripture. All of a sudden, the scripture will start popping up left and right of all the scriptures about giving. And I have seen how God has stepped up and provided over and over again, above all that I could ask or imagine. Because I heard from him, and it's another mark of the intimacy that develops. Another, okay, God has brought me in. I'm hearing him clearly, so I'm going to be. Every chance that you get to hear an instruction from God is an invitation of intimacy and with God.
Yeah, that's right.
It's like, will you obey this? Will you do what I'm asking you to do? And watch how I'm ready to move and show you what I have for you?
Yeah. MJ, did you have something to add?
I'm hearing the same theme. You know, I'm on this theme right now with tithing or with offering, whatever word we want to use. They're so interconnected. We hear from the Lord, and that comes from a place of worship. Nobody should be just giving, I mean, we could have a whole nother book club and a whole nother session on tithe. I'm not taking away from that. But when we're talking about, in the context of this book, worship and sacrifice, we do that from a place of worship, from hearing from the Lord, and then obedience becomes easy in his presence.
Yeah.
Obedience, what didn't, maybe before it was like, I don't know about this. It's that's where the magic happens. That's where it happens. Right in the middle, from between the courtyard and the Holy of Holies. It's just, you letting stuff go, you're getting faith, you giving that tithe or that offering. That's just another part of this this worship thing.
So I grew up where just about every week when the pastor was taking up the offering, it would be referred to as, part of our worship unto the Lord. And I've always seen giving as part of my worship, but I've been challenging myself more recently on how I think about this, because sometimes, think about the tithe, if we're sticking with that, and that's 10%. So let me backtrack before the tithe. Some people come into the church and they've already spent 100% or allocated 100% of their income elsewhere. And for them, it's a step of faith to give $50, which might not be anywhere near the 10% of their income, but that's a sacrifice for them. And I believe that if we start with what we can and a little bit more, it becomes worship. It is a sacrifice, and then over time, increase what we give as we continue to learn to sacrifice. So we're stretching our finances here. And that's what I'm thinking about, is that even if people give 10%, the tithe, the official number, that can become very comfortable for them, where it's no longer sacrificial, right?
Yeah, I think that really where I want to be, where I think we all want to head, is into a culture of giving to the Lord, where it doesn't take away from the tithe at 10% or at a number like, wrong way, hold on, at a number like Jeff was saying, but giving to the Lord, it's day by day, right? We're spirit-led people, and it's financial. It's also our time. It can also be a really clear obedience as part of our tithe, not taking away from the obedience of the 10% or whatever that number is, but to take care of someone in your home, in your faith community, your home church, on behalf of the Lord saying, hey, I want you to do this. I want you to do this thing. You're still giving unto the Lord, taking care of his people. Mm-hmm. So I think for me, David, when you say that, it's where my heart is I want to be part of a culture of giving to the Lord. I don't want it to be confined to the tithe, even though I want the tithe to be the foundation of that. I want it to be broader. I want us to have a more expansive idea of what it means.
Because giving is not something that we do once a paycheck or once a month or once a week on Sundays when we put something into the offering plate. When we are developing lifestyles of worship, when we are talking about practicing the presence of God, to tag out Brother Lawrence's book, he talked about that, but also in this, the power of his presence and walking in the awareness that he's always with us. And there is plenteous work to do, although it's not about the work. In many giving campaigns, one of the cliches I'm sure that many people have heard is about time, talent, and treasure. The 3 T's of tithing, of giving: time, talent, and treasure. And for some people, the financial piece, even if they are in a struggle of, if they don't have plenteous of ducats to disperse here and there, many times that makes one feel like they have nothing to give. And that's a lie from the pit of hell.
Yeah.
because one showing up and being present and being fully invested into what is happening, of listening for where I can be an ear or a pair of hands that work alongside brothers and sisters, um, or just being present to the people. Because and again, it's about turning to be available to Him.
Yeah.
Because when we make ourselves available to Him, it is amazing how quickly in the marketplace, in our jobs, wherever we walk, as we start to learn to walk in His presence, it's amazing how He will bring people across our paths and us have conversations and opportunities for Him to be glorified, for His testimony to be released out of, and not that the testimony is a dutiful chore. Oh, I need to talk about Jesus in this because that's what I'm supposed to do. No, it's I want to talk about Jesus
I want
because of
to.
this
Yeah.
relationship that I
Right.
have, that I want to share with you,
Yeah.
that He is available to you as well. That the God of all creation, who is the creator of us all, wants to have a personal relationship with you.
Yeah. And I think what you touched on something that Mandy said too was that um, it's about the culture. We want our Pink Church. We want a culture of giving. We want a culture of worship. We don't want a culture of obligation and, oh, well, if I have to, or, well, that's just the way, it's expected of us or whatever. Because that's fairly toxic culture for a church to
Cheerful givers.
have.
Cheerful
But
givers.
I want to share. I want to speak of the goodness of God. I want to give financially and of my time and of my talents. It's that's part of the culture of a place. I want to share something funny with you. What's kind of funny, one of you mentioned the idea of fundraising or financial campaigns, and I was in a rather large church. Well, it was the church I was at back in Brisbane, and they were there was a financial campaign going on, and the senior pastor had everybody. We'd been worshiping. There'd been some prayer and some Bible reading and a little bit of word, and then he said, "We're just going to pray, and we're going to wait until God tells each of us a number. God is going to show us a number." And so there was this silence and this reverence in the room, and I knew God was showing people numbers. I knew it, that they were having and then partway through the silence, he said, that number is the amount that God's asking you to begin to give regularly. And there was kind of like this in the room. And then he said, and the Lord just said to me, put a 0 on the end of that. And it's like, oh my God. Like those kind of things that I don't know that the Lord did say put a 0 on it, but the idea is that now what can we do to stretch ourselves in our giving, because it is worship. It's part of the culture of what we should be doing. I want to bring you to task over something though, Jeffrey. Something you said. I'm sorry. You referred to an offering plate. Like, do people still have offering plates? Like we don't at Pink Church, almost 100% of our giving is online. So it's like deacons don't even have to count the money at
We
the
don't
end
even
of
have a
the
virtual
service.
offering plate. We don't even have an icon that looks like an offering plate. So
But
No,
think
right.
about the
we know.
woman with 2 coins that Jesus saw give her 2 coins in the temple. Also, I work in a job that services the bottom of our community in terms of finances, in terms of access. Not everybody has access to the internet.
Yeah, I know. I'm just
So
joking about the
it
plates.
is there, but
Place for it.
the physical act also of people who to for those who they're at the stage of giving that 20, and it's the 20 they have in their wallet that is still there. the number of people who hear the Spirit of God because they've been holding on to that 20 for whatever reason. And then they get into church and the Spirit of the Lord speaks to them and says, that 20 that you have in your wallet, go ahead and pull it out and put it into play. It is that it's an act of giving that it just seems to have more prophetic relevance to clicking the give button on my phone. Because best believe I haven't put that in the plate in a long time.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Showing your age, Jeff. Go on, MJ.
I think that goes back to what we're talking about the intimacy with the Lord, hearing the voice of the Lord, and being obedient right then and there out of that sacrifice. You know, that what makes that purposeful, that what's it called, an offering plate? I can't even remember what it's called. We're so modern. I'm kidding. I just it's called, but it's the same thing when someone says, "Hey, go give a word of encouragement to that stranger," or so and so they need some groceries. You need to go get them some groceries. Whatever it is, those are made up examples, but all of that, I'm using my snap now, but all of that is what makes that prophetic to me, Jeff, is that you're in a place of intimacy and worship, and then you obey. You do that instant obey, and the Lord is in it. So,
well, I mean, those acts of giving people encouraging words, getting groceries for somebody, or like the things that you mentioned, or anything else like that. I mean, when you think about it, we're doing it as unto the Lord. So we're actually not giving to them specifically, we're giving to the Lord. And then often, personally, I found that causes a level of sacrifice in my, because if I give that person the $20 that I've got in my pocket, that's, opportunity cost that's $20 I could have been spending on something else, so there is that kind of sacrifice, or the going up to people in the grocery store and saying, I just want you to know this. And sometimes I'll use the word the Lord wants me to say this, or sometimes I'll just tell them because it might creep them out. Well, it creeps them out anyway. So, but that's me giving up my self-consciousness again. It's me putting away the awareness of how embarrassed I feel about things and actually putting the Lord first. So in that way, that's a sacrifice. And I believe that's part of ministering to the Lord.
Time is a big one. I am an extrovert. I am. I love people.
Sure.
I have been so starved of extroversion in this time. That being said, as I've gotten older, I have learned to appreciate my time more. That when I don't have to be on for anybody, when I can just be at home and be about my business. And even then, that's a false way of thinking, because we should be about his business, but my time. That even when I'm at home by myself in my room, if I'm going to get on Facebook, then I need to be aware of all of the people who I'm connected to. Because how many times when you start scrolling on Facebook, you see opportunities for encouragement, opportunities for prayer, opportunities for messages to reach out to people. And it's not the same thing as calling up somebody and having a phone conversation, or even in today's day, FaceTiming them to have a FaceTime conversation. That intentionality goes a long way, instead of just the sporadic way of I'm going onto Facebook and just seeing what's there.
Yeah.
But we all, being about the Lord's business is sometimes just seeing how many people are in our church community. Do you have a regular cycle of reaching out to every person who's in your church community on a regular basis to be intentional about strengthening the bonds of you and your believers? Especially for those of us, New Covenant Church of Atlanta, I know I have fallen short because I have the same people that I see on a regular basis through all the things that I'm a part of. But it does require effort. It does require intentional time. And that is, and especially when you feel, we were talking, going back to the sacrifice piece, when you feel the weight of that, or it seems larger, and you can't do it alone, but you can use the gifts that God has given you. I'm speaking to you as much as I'm speaking to myself. If I point at you, I have 3 fingers pointed at myself. That to use our gifts that God has given us of encouragement, to assemble the teams that are about that business, to assemble the groups that are about that business, to just say, have you reached out to this person? Have you, and
Yeah.
all of the people that we're out to who are not in our churches, but that can use our encouragement beyond the walls of our church.
Yeah, that's true. And thank you for the reminder, because I'm not real good at all of that staying. This introvert, I did the Myers-Briggs thing again today. I'm still an introvert. Sorry.
Send me the letters later. I want to know.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm going to text you later.
I will. You probably can already tell. So let's move on to the checklist. Now, I like checklists. When I know that I want to do a thorough job, or when there's a long, complicated task, I'll put down step by step the checklist that I know I have to do. And so it helps me to be thorough about something, and it means that I can do something excellently. So Brant, near the end of chapter 3, puts together what I look at and think, oh, that's a checklist there of ways to minister to the Lord. So let's talk about what's on Brant's checklist of ways to minister to the Lord. I'll start with a list.
Okay, I was going to say.
I wrote them in the.
I want to see. I want to compare my list to your list. I know we both probably have one.
Well, I just wrote in the. I'm bad. I write in books, which is funny because when I was a child, I was probably told never to write in books with words, and now I write in books with words all the time. Lifting up hands. Let's talk about that for a minute. I mean, Jeff, you started to touch on this before, like the various postures that we have in raising our hands. We start off like all humbly and feebly, like even the beginning of, oh, I'm not sure about this raising hands thing. And then gradually the hands seem to get higher the more confident in the Lord we get.
Because we are, in our 5 minutes until we reach an hour point, I want to talk about the whole list as a whole. What I found reading that list, you're not going to do everything that's on that list and every time you get into your worship thing. So it's not a checklist per se. But it is a good thing to review on a regular basis and say, when was the last time I was actually on the floor with my face on the floor before God? When was the last time that I shouted for God? When was the last time that I offered up a song that wasn't one that I knew, but just let flow out of me? Especially as many people in this time, for those who rely on worship on Sunday mornings and for the Levites or the worship band or the praise team to lead them into worship, have they been intentional about cultivating that worship in their lives at home with the songs and the instruments? And that's not to say that that is the only way to worship. There are many things in there, although all of the instruments are mentioned, all of the voices, the clapping of the hands, the raising of the hands, the bowing, the kneeling, the prostrate. And it goes back to earlier when we were talking about how do we prepare ourselves to enter in? How do we prepare ourselves to press in? And it speaks to also being led by the Holy Spirit and what God says. Because God will tell us, and it's not even about Him. He's like, no, I want you to do this because there's something I'm trying to show you. And it only comes when you are in this position. Vantage points. When we change our position physically, it changes what we can see, how we breathe, how all of those pieces, and God uses it all.
Yeah. Well, you just went through pretty much the whole list then. That was good.
Yeah, you did great. I want to add something that's on my mind. It's really similar to what Jeff is saying. It's actually this memory I have, and it's from years ago. A dear friend of mine who's an apostolic leader now in the Latino community in the Bay Area. We were both really young, serving the Lord, and he said the least academic thing I've ever heard. He said, "Mandy," which is my name, Mandy Jo, MJ. "Mandy, if you want to speak French, you start acting French." And it was the dumbest thing I'd ever heard. And it was so profoundly true when we talk about worship. What I'm saying is there's this huge list, and Jeff and Apostle David, you're right. It's not often that we're going to do all of these things. We can always go back and refer. But where does your heart want to go before the Lord? If to you that place means there's some expression like getting on your face, if it's getting up and getting cray, if you want to speak French, start acting French.
Yeah.
That's
learn
it.
The work.
That's
learn the work by doing the work.
Whatever it looks like to you, there's a whole list. What does that mean to you? Getting on your knees.
Yep.
Going into a deep living stillness, Brant says.
I love that. Of course, yeah. I love the be still and be quiet. That's the introvert's perfect worship. Like, go away, let me be quiet.
Yeah, so
I love what Jeff said too there. Like, look at the list and go, is there something here that I've forgotten about, or I've ignored, or I've overlooked? Is there something here that if I brought that into my tool belt of worship technologies, is there something that I can bring that I haven't been to the Lord? So that was really good. But you're right, it's a long list. But the thing that I noticed too is that whenever people worshipped, and Brant obviously pointed this out because it's like the subtitle of her book, that when the worshippers began and were there worshiping in all of these various manners, as they worshipped, God's presence came, the glory of God came in those places where they were worshiping, and that's the sense of what we want. I want people to understand that worshiping is not just this experience, whether it's on Sunday mornings or I know people are worshiping at home now, and people are worshiping, I think, coming to understand that worship can go on all week long because, well, we're on our own anyway. So but as we worship, it's really helping us to focus on the presence of God and allowing the presence to fall. I remind myself all of the time, I've got here, they sang to him for 24 hours. When was the last time we had a worship-a-thon? Like we do the 24-hour prayer thing sometimes in the Covenant Network. And like over and over and over, it's when people worship, the glory of God came down. And that's what I want people to understand, is worship's not just this song set that we sing, and sometimes we might raise our hands and it's all wonderful and beautiful. It's about creating the atmosphere for the glory of God to be known and felt and experienced in the room where we are at the time. And I'm hoping for people that's when they're at home on their own, like in the mornings when I get up, I often spend time worshiping, and I'm just aware of the Holy Spirit coming into the room at times. And that's what I want everybody to experience. I want everybody to feel the weight of the glory on them that really only comes when we've spent time preparing for worshiping and then worshiping as well. MJ, I know that the times that you and Sterling and I have been at the church and we've broadcast, and those times we have a focus on spontaneous worship here at Pink Church. And those times with the three of us in the room worshiping, we sense, like, right, don't we?
Good stuff.
There have been times at the end we go, oh my goodness, that was amazing. Yeah, unfortunately, it has never come across on the broadcasts at all nice. But really the idea is, just spend time in worship and the glory comes.
And I cannot wait. I cannot wait. I cannot wait until we can be back in physical presence and making music together, as much is lost across the interwebs. Because there's nothing like the live experience of corporate worship as everybody is on this individual journey collectively. And then what happens when God aligns everybody in a moment and enthroned himself on our praises. The word, when the word comes to life, as you've been in the word and you hear these verses, and then suddenly you experience it. And it is an experiential knowledge and relationship of this amazing God who loves us with a love like no other and just wants to be in communion with us.
Yeah. You're right. That's good. I mean, you're preaching my word. Like the idea of we are all worshippers. We worship throughout the week, on our own, or maybe in our families or our pods. We worship, and then the opportunity when we come together corporately to worship. It's like this convergence of pilgrims that have all got together and at the temple, and it's just magnificent. Read through the Psalms, the songs of the ascents, and you get this sense of there's all of these people worshiping and then just coming together at the temple at the end, and it's just remarkable. So this has been a really good conversation. I would encourage everybody to get the book and read it and write in the book. Just notes, send us your comments. If you've got questions about any of it at all, if you send us questions, contact@pinkchurchphx.com. Or you can just write questions here and we'll get to them. We'd love to have time to answer some questions next week if people have got them. Next week is chapter 4. It's the last chapter of the book. The next book in book club. You ready? I'm not. Well, I'll tell you next week. But it's a classic. It's a foundational book. It's by Kenneth Hagin. So you're going to want to know about it. Why am I waiting? I want you all to go and get the book if you haven't. Believer's Authority by Kenneth Hagin. We're going to go through that. I'm putting together a panel at the moment for that. If you listen and you would like to bring something to the panel, by all means, just let me know and we'll see if there's space and time. But yeah, so MJ and Jeff, once again, thank you so much for your contribution. I just know that when we have a chat from our heart is coming, the word that river of life comes up out and spills over as we share with one another. So it's been great having you again, and I'll look forward to seeing everybody here next week, Thursday night at 7:00 Phoenix time. And you can work it out what time it is for you if you live somewhere else in the country. In the meantime, remember that you are loved, you are favored, and you are a child of the Most High God. Bless you all. Love you. Bye.
Bless you guys. Bye.
Bye.